Okay, today I want to do another competition, another verses. And I want again to do God versus the world, God versus culture. I don't know if this is allowed in the heavens. I think it is, but um, I want to talk about the choice between our will and God's will. And I also want to talk about the hardest prayer we can ever pray, but is that will change our life. That is the smartest prayer that we could ever pray. And I think this applies to Christians and non-Christians. You'll find out how. And so when it comes to just our will versus his will, you will notice how culture, like I guess I could call it culture, or the world tells us, hey, follow your heart, do what makes you happy, manifest your dream life. If you have noticed, all of my most recent episodes kind of put these thoughts into perspective of, should we follow ourselves or should we follow something better, someone better? So hear me out. It's just a thought. All right, if it is your first time here, welcome to the Hear Me Out Just a Thought podcast. I am Gigi. I am faceless, but I am interested in having real conversations about faith, about life, about all of the things we can wrestle with as just mere humans. I used to be a non-believer. I used to not really care and follow my own will, my own understanding. And then something switched, something changed. I came across this book that Christians call the Bible. And I was interested to know what's up with that because I always wanted to find answers to questions I had. And I'm sure many, many people have. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like a couple of years later, I am now talking about God and Jesus and the Bible and apologetics on a YouTube podcast. And here we are. So you know what? No fluff, no perfect Christian, talk, just real thoughts. And I want to hear your opinions about the very, very real struggles that we go through. And hopefully you can get some encouragement here as well. So let's get into it. Now, as I mentioned before at the top of the episode, I want to put together a showdown. I want to look at God versus culture, and I'll spend a couple of episodes on this showdown. The first one was on the previous episode where we talked about manifesting, and then we talked about being a high value woman, and we looked at what the world teaches us versus what the world says about our value. If you have missed all of that, go back, find it, listen to it. But let's keep it up, right? Let's set up the competition. Okay, in one corner we have culture. We have what we hear today. It's loud, but it's also confident. It looks positive. It's promising us some type of freedom through self-discovery and self-empowerment and doing whatever makes us happy. On the other side of things, we have God, who is, according to himself, sovereign and wise, and he's calling us to do that thing, which is to surrender, which is to trust him, and which is to believe that he actually knows what's best for us. And so we have these two contenders, and I want to know who wins. I'm interested in knowing who wins. Spoiler alert, I think it's God, and I'm going to spend the next few minutes arguing for God. So there is no secret in on this channel. I know the end, you know the end in my opinion, but I always want to hear what you think. So I'm just here to try and convince you for on these arguments and on these topics, because I'm sincerely convinced that this is true. And also I do understand somebody who would be convinced of the opposite, because that used to be me. So I guess that's my mini testimony. So showdown, God versus culture, round one. Dun, dun, dun. I should have effects. I don't have effects. I'm not really tech savvy like that. I will work in the future on finding out how to do really cool sound effects, because you're stuck with only my voice. You don't have video because I'm too much of an introvert for that. But if I can provide you with really cool audio, I will try. If it's too difficult, we'll keep the focus on God, because I'm convinced you don't care too much about that and you care about the wisdom. Round 1. Let's talk about actual freedom, right? What culture says versus what God says. And let's compare it to bondage, because either you are in bondage or you're free. And so culture tells us, again, like I said, be free, do what you want, find yourself, explore yourself, no rules, no truth. You have a truth, your neighbor has another truth, the next person has another truth, and you could just be you. And my question to you and myself, what I sat down and thought about, because again, I want to live the best life ever. I wanted to live the best life ever. I wanted to just cater to my own needs. I wanted to feel free and happy and light. I wanted to feel on top of the world. And so let's look around together on my little notes. And the question I want to ask is, does being quote unquote free, doing what we want, having no rules, does it actually lead to freedom? Because people chase money, right? The bag. They were told, be a boss babe, I don't know what the equivalent for men are, but like wealthy, high value men who have millions and millions of dollars. But some of us are drowning in debt, and some of us are still rich, but we are chasing more money and more money. The chase of money, for example, does it solve the problem? Does it lead to freedom? If half of the world is in high debt because they don't have enough money, and the other rest is on a perpetual quest for more money, because once you have a little money, you want more money to do better, bigger and better things. Are we free then? And then when it comes to just no rules, do what you want, follow your heart, we can see that people end up chasing other things. We end up chasing love. We end up chasing validation, admiration, attention. And sometimes we can end up in toxic relationships because we are seeking for completion. We're seeking for happiness in a mere human being that is also flawed. We are expecting somebody to make us happy in all aspects of life, or we're putting expectations on them. And then when they do not meet those expectations, albeit healthy or non-healthy expectations, then we're disappointed, and now we're flawed, and then we get heartbroken. And things start to kind of be colored a certain color, where we're now in toxic relationship after toxic relationship. Some of us chase happiness. They chase the feeling of being happy, of feeling light, of feeling like we control our environment, and our emotions. But some way we end up depressive or having high anxiety. Our anxiety can be through the roof, because the more control we try to have, the less control we feel like we have. Because now when some little thing goes left unplanned, we feel completely out of it, and we get more anxious. So my question is, does it actually lead to freedom to do what we want without rules and without limitations? My position on this is that culture's definition of freedom, the whole do whatever you want, it actually leads to the opposite, which is bondage. You are controlled by your desires. You're controlled by your emotions and the endless, and I mean it, endless need for more. So we end up in bondage. So that's culture. Let's look at God's way. It's very simple, because he says something. He says in the Bible, for example, if we look at the book of John, and I will always pause here to put a note in, if you're a non-Christian, non-religious person, if you're an atheist, an agnostic person, if you're just a skeptic and you're like, I don't know what I think yet, that's fine. Let me be the girl to just present you what it says, have you tested in the world if you allow me, and just you come back to me with results. You tell me if it works or not. I'm all for rational choices. I do not want to push a religion on you. That's not my judge. But I do want to encourage everybody to test it out because it's tried, tested, and true. So, disclaimer is done. Let's go to John. Because in John chapter 8 on verse 32, there's something about freedom. And it says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." There is kind of a little talk about who are the opponents, who are the descendants of who, etc., etc. And the verse right before the verse 32 is, "To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, 'If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.'" So I guess essentially what we're being told, and we always want to make sure that when we read the Bible, we understand who's talking, to who they are talking, what about. But I will remind everyone and myself in the process that the Bible was not written to us, right? We're not the people Jesus is talking to in that instance on that day. Most of us were not born. And if you were born in Jesus's time, I mean, send me an email. I have questions. But it's written for us. The Bible is written for us. And so we need to draw wisdom from these conversations. So Jesus is saying, if you follow my teachings, then you will know the truth, first thing. And then the truth itself will set you free. And so I guess the freedom thing is not doing necessarily what you want, according to Jesus's words, but it's knowing the truth. Okay? And the truth among all things about who we are as people and what we want and what we do. I took 3 notes here, but one is that we don't have to prove our worth or chase it. We talked about that in the previous episode about being high value, but also that we don't have to chase happiness, because happiness is not found in things or other people, but it's found in Him. Now, things and other people are gifts from Him, are blessings for Him. So it's not to say that we shouldn't care about other people or cater to the things or take care of the things that we are blessed with. That's not what I'm saying. But it's saying true happiness is found in Him. And also that we don't have to be controlled by our emotions. Emotions come and go. We feel something Monday, we feel a different thing Friday. If we were to trust ourselves and completely dive headfirst with whatever our emotions are telling us, I don't know many people that will be sane and stable and fulfilled. I'm sure you can think of a time where you thought you wanted something and it ended up not being it. I'm sure you can think of a time where you thought you were completely head over heels in love with somebody, that you will marry them, and then it turned out to be not the person for you. I don't know if you can think of a time, I certainly can, where you got upset and then maybe you said something that at the time you felt it was an emotion, but that you regretted after. So if you go ahead and follow your every emotion, that's fine. That's your, I guess you're free to do it, right? Quote unquote free to do it. We're all free to do it, but where does it lead? Again, does it lead to true freedom or does it lead to bondage? And so my argument here again is that surrendering to God's will, right, God's truth, feels restrictive. It's going to feel restrictive at first. Like, oh, let yourself go and follow me instead. But in the end, it's the one thing that can actually set you really, really free. Because why? Well, let's keep going. Round 2 of the showdown. Actually, before I even go to round 2, let me know what you think about this freedom piece. Do you think following ourselves leads to freedom, or do you feel like following ourselves leads to bondage, or are you somewhere in the middle? I'm only one voice, but I'm so interested in your voice. I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comments. Round 2. Let's talk about control. Does control give you peace, or does control give you anxiety, right? culture tells us you're in control of your life, right? You are behind the driving wheel of your life. Do what you need to do. Follow again yourself. And it sounds empowering for sure, until life throws something at us that we cannot control. Until, for example, we lose a job, or if you've ever lost a job, you know what that feels like. You have everything under control, and then unexpectedly there's a cut or anything like that. That sense of anxiety because you can't control what's happening, just you probably know what that is like. Or until you go through a bad breakup where the other person says, I am done, I cannot be with you anymore, I'm sorry, I have to go. If you've ever been surprised by a breakup or left behind, you probably know what that feels like, because you can't control the other person anymore. Not that you were trying to, but you cannot control what's happening at that moment. Or even a diagnosis. If you've ever heard bad news at the doctor's office, you know what that feels like. Basically, suddenly the whole you're in control narrative falls all the way apart. That's why I'm saying it sounds empowering to be told via videos and books and motivational speakers and all of this and all of that. Hey, you're in control. And it's true. You can control your immediate actions. You can try to control what you say, what you do, how much money you save, how much you work out. We're not completely powerless. But the moment we lose a little bit of control, this whole narrative falls apart. So that's what culture tells us. But God's way is that He never said we were in control. He said, hey, be still and know that I am God. And if you have never heard of that, it's in the book of Psalms. You can go and find it. But God says, hey, be still and know that I am God. So that means that when life feels chaotic, you don't have to panic because God is in control. Because God is in control. And that's not to say that you don't do anything, that you sit back and do nothing for the rest of your life. You'll quickly find that that's not a winning strategy. But the panic side of things, if you follow God's teachings and apply them in your life, you will learn to see that God is in control. When things don't go our way, then we don't have to force them. We can work hard, not play hard. See, I'm so used to saying this with my kids. Like, if you work hard, you can play hard. You can work hard and you can try your very best, but having to force something is trying to play God, and we're not God. God is working for the good. God is goodness itself. And so I guess here what I'm arguing is that surrendering to God's will, it will remove the pressure to have everything figured out. Instead of stressing about controlling everything, you get to rest in knowing that He's got it covered, just the way He says. And again, I will put an emphasis here that it's not about doing nothing. It's not about not trying at all. It's about knowing that if I follow His teachings, if I submit myself to Him, if, again, that dirty word, submission, if I submit myself to Him, then I don't have to try and control everything. Then I can be still and rest in the truth that He's got it all. He's got the whole world under, what's that song? He's got the whole world in His hands. Yes, that. So that's about control. Now, lastly, let's have the showdown for round 3. Ding, ding, ding. About short-term gain versus long-term blessing. I guess short-term gain versus long-term gain, or short-term gain blessing versus long-term blessing. Because one thing I surely did notice, or that we're encouraged to do a lot if we live in today's culture, is, hey, YOLO, right? Live for now, YOLO. And if you don't know what YOLO is, it's okay. It means you only live once, but I've heard it everywhere. I understand that not everyone is the same age on this channel. Not everyone lives in the same place. I understand that not everyone speaks the same language. So YOLO means you only live once, and it's essentially phrase that people use to say, let me just do whatever I want because you only live once. But here's the thing, not to be the Debbie Downer here, but living for the moment usually leads to regret. I've had to learn this. Living for the moment usually leads to regret. That type of like, hey, I'll have one more drink. You know what? Too bad. Let me have one more drink. It can easily turn into some type of addiction. That, oh, let me just do this little compromise once because who knows? It could lead to a mess you can not fix later. I can think of people who end up in adultery because of a little, that one little compromise, or people who end up stealing money or doing illegal things. And it all came from, just one little compromise here because YOLO. I can think of just so many situations where it starts kind of okay, where we're like, we only live once, but it can turn into a mess that ruins our lives. That whole, I'll do what feels good right now, I just don't want to do what feels bad, can turn into consequences that do not feel so good anymore. And hey, that's a human feeling, to have our flesh tell us, I want to have pleasure. I want to not be so straight all of the time and follow the rules. I want to be able to compromise this time because I'm so tired and I'm so stressed and I need this or I need that, or I'm desperate. Or I want to do what feels good. I want to drink that drink. I want to do that drug, whatever it is. That's the flesh calling. That's the flesh speaking. And again, if you're a non-Christian, non-religious person, that's fine. But the flesh calling just means we have some things that we cannot get over easily without an outside intervention like God. There are battles that you will fight. There are situations that you'll find yourself in where your human nature, your physical limitations, your emotional limitations, your intelligence, it's limited. You don't know everything. You're not everywhere all at once. You're not eternal. You were not there when everything was created. And so we are limited. And there are some things that are beyond us and that we need help with. Wink, wink, prayer. Wink, wink, God. Wink, wink, spirituality. But you know what? God says the opposite. God doesn't teach you just YOLO, right? God says that his way is not just about the right now, but it's about the long term. It's about a promise. It's about a future state that also comes after this present state. And we can think of people in the Bible. Again, if you've never opened a Bible in your life, that's fine. But I do encourage you to explore that. We can think of Joseph, who got betrayed by his own family. Like, it be your own family. By his own family, who got enslaved, who got imprisoned because some lady decided to lie on him. But you know what? Because he surrendered, he became a ruler in Egypt. And not that we all need to become rulers in Egypt, but it's just a way to show sometimes in the craziest, most upsetting situations where we feel like things are hard or unfair. If we surrender, something good can come out of it. But if we try to force, and if we try to control everything and play God, maybe we won't see, we'll see immediate gains, right? The right now, but maybe we won't see the long term. And if you're interested in finding that story, it's in the first book. It's in the book of Genesis, and it's in chapter, I believe it's 50. We can think of Jesus himself. I mean, he went to the cross because he surrendered himself. He surrendered. And now we have salvation because of it. There's a long-term blessing because even Jesus showed us what it's like to surrender. I don't know if that's weakness. I feel like that's strength. And so I guess I want to take a moment to say, you listening might be going through something right now that feels just unfair, man. We talk a lot about how things feel heavy, or we feel sad, or we feel betrayed, but the unfair portion of things is what gets us just, and you might be going through something that seems unfair. But if you surrender it to God, who knows what kind of testimony could be on the other side, right? Who has a story? If you have a story and you feel comfortable, I know my listeners here don't necessarily feel comfortable commenting yet, right? Yet, it'll come. But tell me if you've ever surrendered something and then something great came out of it. Give me, if you have a testimony of a story that is like, here's where it started, here's how it ended, who would have thought it? Put it in the comment section to encourage others as well. And while you're there, if you haven't subscribed. You know what? I'll wait. Still waiting. Good. So tell me if this has ever happened to you where you would surrender and then you have a testimony on the other side of things. But the fact is, there is long-term blessings in surrendering. And surrendering also means to get to know who you're surrendering to and why. And so at the top of the episode, I talked about why it is that I think God wins for the reasons that I just mentioned. But I also talked about the hardest prayer that you will ever pray, but that it will change your life. And so I want to touch on why surrendering feels hard. Okay? Because let's be honest, surrendering, like I said, it feels like we're losing. It feels like, why would I take this control? And there's two scenarios. Either we are a Christian and we're like, I know you're God, I want to surrender, but it feels like I'm losing something because I don't get what I want. We're like a child, like, I don't get what I want. And then there's a second scenario where if we're not Christian, if we're not spiritual, if we don't believe in any good God, then it's like, why would I put my life into an imaginary guy upstairs hands? That seems just crazy. And so in both situations, we feel like we're losing. Either we're losing our minds if we're non-religious or non-believers, or we're just losing control. And the answer is yes, it is, right? It's losing, because you lose other things. You lose your pride. You lose your illusion of control, because it's an illusion of control. And you lose your idea of how things should go. Okay? Let's look at Matthew for a quick second. Matthew 16, verse 25, where it says, whoever wants to save their life will lose it. Whoever loses the life for my sake will find it. So you know what? Surrendering according to God isn't just smart. It's how you actually win in life. And again, we're very spiritual here. We're all like, yes. But the fact is, I also want to live a smart life. I also want to, quote unquote, put the odds in my corner. And my corner, if it's led by me, Gigi, that won't go well. But if it's led by the creator of life, by the one who is sovereign, by the one who is omniscient, omnipotent, by the one who is goodness itself, and who created us all along with the universe, we can't actually lose. And so if we're trying to save our life here as we know it and the way we know it, we will lose it. If we lose our life and our will and our pride and these illusions for his sake, we will find life. So just a quick reminder. But again, my question remains, the hard truth of the hardest prayer we'll ever pray. So because surrendering is hard, how do we make it a habit? Like, how do we actually do this? Because saying, hey, God, I surrender could be easy when life is good. When your bank account is full and your belly is full and your friends are okay and your family is okay and your job is going great and everything is good. That's easy to say, hey, God, I surrender everything. Because the truth is, you are in control in your head. So you're not really surrendering anything. You're not giving up any. That's like when people do some type of fasting and you're like, I'm going to give up cigarettes, but you don't smoke. you would be just lying to yourself and lying to God, or lying to whatever the reason you were doing that fasting, whether it be spiritual or just in your life. If you let go of something that you don't even need, you're not letting go of anything at all. So it's harder when things feel like they are falling apart. And so here are 3 little notes that I took, 3, I guess, simple ways to make surrendering to God a daily habit. And again, this is encouragement for myself as well, because sometimes I think I'm surrendering and I realize later I'm like, oh, I didn't really let that go. But I'm here to say that the times I really did let go, great testimonies have come out of that. And I talked about it, I think, in previous episodes. So, number 1, let's start our prayers with submission immediately. When we start praying, by the way, if you don't pray, I encourage you to start. It does not have to be pretty. It does not have to be like the most poetic thing you've ever done. Just try it. It could be very simple. Say what's on your heart, as long as you know you're talking to God, as long as you understand that you're talking to the creator of all things and the being that gave everything for you, you will be fine. Just start today. And so before starting to ask for what you want or what you need, you know what? We can say something like, God, I want your will above mine. I want your will before mine. That's an immediate submission. That's a way to remind ourselves, hey, I'm about to pray. I'm about to talk to my Father. I'm about to ask for things or request things or cry out to him. But in the end, I want his will to be done, not mine. That's the starting a prayer with submission. And then we can recognize where number 2, that would be, we can recognize where we are holding on way too tight. Is it a relationship in your life? Is it a goal that you set for yourself? Is it a fear that you have? Ask yourself, am I fighting this, or am I fighting for this, should I say, because I believe it's truly right, or because I just want to hold on? I just don't want to let it go. Am I just being stubborn here, or do I really think that this is right? And for number 3, for people who, like I mentioned, put it in the comments if you're comfortable, trust God's track record. Look back at the times you thought he was ignoring you, only to realize that maybe later on, hey, his no was actually a huge blessing. Maybe look back at a time where you thought, I cannot make it out of this sickness. I cannot make it out of this heartbreak. I cannot make it out of this financial, pits. And out of nowhere, you prayed and things got better. And you know that it was not random. It was your God answering your prayers, or it was your God protecting you, or it was your God blessing you long term instead of just give you a short term feel good moment. Trust God's track record. And we will get into the habit on this channel of bragging about God. Let's brag about God. Let's brag about what God does. Let's brag about being able to wake up in the morning. Let's brag about getting better, when we were sick. Let's brag about maybe having really, really toxic relationships that changed for the better when we invited God into those relationships. Let's talk about how we used to have ugly personalities, perhaps in the past, and became new people. Let's talk about how maybe we had a hard time forgiving folks around us that hurt us, and now we can easily forgive. Not that we have become a doormat, but we can see beyond the thing that we feel in the moment and just forgive, because we also have been forgiven. Let's brag, people. Let's learn to brag about God, and I'll try to encourage it. Because he has a tremendous track record, and it's the only track record you need to really, really remember. Okay, so I guess in the showdown, who won? In your opinion, who wins? Is it the culture? Is it the world? Is it God? And can we pray to, if we have found that it's God, can we pray to always be able to put his will above our will? And can we try to make it a habit? And can we encourage each other? All right, so let me ask you something again. What is one area of your life where you feel like you need to be in control? And I want to ask you, what would it look like to actually surrender that to God? That thing you're thinking about, that problem you have, that addiction you have, that relationship you have that is not supposed to be a relationship, that those things you're doing that are not 100% legal, whatever it is that you're thinking of right now where you feel like you need to be in control or things to go your way. What would it look like to actually surrender that to God? And this is a call again for my non-Christian friends as well. What would it look like if you tried it? So drop your thoughts in the comment section. I wanna hear how this resonates with you. So before we go, I think I've never done this. Have I done this in past episodes? I don't think so. We talked about the hardest prayer, and that could change your life. It's the hardest, but it's the smartest. And so before we go, I want to leave you with a challenge to do something, which is to pray. Pray that, go and admit that you like being in control, that we all like things going our way, but that today we can choose to trust him, and that not our will be done, but like Jesus said, that his will be done. And even if it's hard, even if it's things we don't get, we don't understand, but we commit to believing that his way is better. And so let's pray to have the strength and also the faith to trust that in the end he wins. And so if he wins, we win. And so my challenge for you today is pray. Just say a prayer that is very simple, which is, give me the strength, give me the faith to surrender to you in all things, and that your will be done, not ours, not mine, not yours. And for my non-Christian friends, when we end a prayer, we just say amen, to say that, so be it. And that's it. The hardest prayer, but the smartest one too. So if this spoke to you today, share with somebody who would need to hear it. I know that a person who needs to hear this. Maybe they're going through a hard time. Maybe they're having trouble letting go or trusting God. And so send this to them. And of course, like this to let me know that you got something out of it. And of course, like I said, subscribe, because we go together now, and you're here now. And now you're going to have to listen to the rest of it, because the showdown is not done. So just hit subscribe. I will see you next time.